Alright, you guys, today we're going to learn how to do factoring by grouping. So, last time we learned how to use the quadratic formula, and we know that the quadratic formula is one way that you can solve for your x-intercepts. Factoring is another method. If you guys look and follow along on the left-hand side, it's the problem that I'll be working out. As I'm going through the left-hand example, y'all should be working on the right-hand example. Okay, the very first step that you should take is make sure that your given equation is in standard form. Standard form, as a reminder, is ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, and as you guys can see, we have standard form ax squared plus bx plus c. So the very first step that we take is to identify what a, b, and c is. In this example problem, a is 3, b is -7, and c is -6. So for your scholar problem, please identify a, b, and c. Now once you know what a, b, and c is, we need to multiply the numbers a and c. In the example, a is 3 and c is -6. So 3 times -6 gives you a value of -18. Take a second to multiply your example problem a and c. Now once you have that number, ac, you need to come up with all of the factors that multiplied to give you that number. So for example, with -18, you have -1 times 18 and 1 times -18. -2 times 9, 2 times -9. -3 times 6, and 3 times a -6. There should be a negative right there. So for your AC, figure out what are all of the numbers that multiply and give you AC. Now step 4 is you're going to take those numbers and add them together until they give you the value of b. In our example problem, the value of b is -7. So we're looking for an a and a c, the factors for a and c that add to give you -7. So if we go through the first one, -1 plus 18 is 17. 1 plus a -18 is -17. -2 plus 9 is 7, and then 2 plus a -9 gives us -7. Those are our factors. What that means is we're going to replace a -7x with 2x minus 9x, because 2x minus 9x equals -7x, and that's the value that we're replacing. So if you guys look right below, I took 3x squared, and where I would have written a -7x, I'm replacing it with 2x minus 9x, which is where our 2 and our 9 come from. Okay, and then we have -6. What I do then is I break it in half. The first 2 on one side and the last 2 on the other half. 3x squared plus 2x. And then on the other side, I have -9x minus 16. And what we're going to do is break down each of those terms as much as you possibly can. All right, which means all numbers should be broken down into their prime numbers, and then all exponents should be broken down. So if we look at 3 and x squared, we know that 3 is a prime number, and as a little hint, I'm just going to write down some of the common prime numbers on the left-hand side. So 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17 are probably the prime numbers you're going to run into most often. So you're going to stop when you get to one of those numbers. And here we see that 3 is a prime number, so that one we cannot break down any further. But x squared breaks down into x times x. So we're going to break 3x squared to 3 times x. 2 here is a prime number, so we can't break 2 down any further. and x doesn't have an exponent, so it's just x. So 2x becomes 2 times x. Negative 9x, well, 9 is not one of our prime numbers. You guys can see it jumps from 7 to 11. So 9, well, what times what equals 9? Well, 3 times 3. You also have a negative, and then you have an x. You're going to break all of that down into negative times 3 times 3 times x. Similarly, you guys will see that a 6 is not on our prime list. 6 breaks down into 2 times 3. So you guys have a negative times a 3 times a 2. Okay? Now when we look at just one side, we're going to find what do they have in common. So here, the 3 times x has an x here, and then 2x also has an x. So if it's in both the first and the second term, we can pull it out. All right? And that's where we get that x there. See how only one of those x's, right? You pull them all out from both of them, and then you add them together. 3 times x goes right here, and then the 2 comes right down here, okay? So the ones they have in common, you pull out, and then what's left over gets left inside. So we're gonna do the same thing. What do they have in common? Well, both has a negative, both has a 3. But then you're left with a 3x and you're left with a 2 on the other side. Those do not have anything in common. So what we're pulling out is the negative 3 right here. And same thing right there. And then what we're going to leave is the 3x, which goes right here, and the 2, which is right here. And what you guys should find is that the 3x plus 2 inside is the same. That's an indication that you did it correctly. That's important. So what happens from there is those, we're going to factor out that same way. And then what's left out in front, x here and negative 3 here, become our second binomial, x and a minus 3. So you end up with 3x plus 2 times x minus 3. From here, there's actually one more step that I didn't get a chance to write out for you guys. We're going to set the first term equal to the 0. 3x plus 2 equals 0. And then you're going to solve it. Subtract 2 to both sides. 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3, divide by 3. And you get x equals negative 2/3. That is one x-intercept. Your other x-intercept is when you set the second binomial equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. You're going to add 3 to both sides, and then you get x equals 3. Those are your two x-intercepts. All right, so on your student example, make sure you give it a try until you have your answers.